Our first speaker of the evening is Trans2 Performance co-founder and CEO Martin Johnson. Martin has a military background as well as 12 years business experience. For 7 of those years, he worked for one of the largest business and technology consultancy firms in the world. He's here to talk to us tonight about social excellence and why values matter. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a really warm T2 Talks welcome to Martin Johnson.
Well played. So just to reiterate Lee's comments at the start of his introduction, welcome to the Deep on behalf of myself and Trans2 Performance, and welcome to the first ever T2 Talks. So I get the honour of kicking off the first talk of the evening, and as Lee said, it's a talk on social excellence. Social excellence being the ability to adapt, thrive, or excel in any social environment or interpersonal situation. Now, over the last 3 months, I've been delivering this type of talk to CEOs and leadership teams of businesses, to in the military, professional sport, to sales and customer service teams, and more recently to some of the UK's leading business schools in the education sector. And social excellence really is the catalyst for opportunity creation. If you think about it, leaders, managers and coaches have to inspire and motivate teams. Sales and customer service executives need to connect with and enchant their customers. Students and postgraduates, they're competing in a really competitive and crowded job market. And if you think about all of our lives day to day, friendships and relationships pretty much depend on our social capability. As I said, I've delivered this talk a lot of times in the last 3 months, and the quickest I've ever delivered it is 1 hour and 10 minutes. So I have 20 minutes this evening, well, probably 18 now, after wasting 2 on the introduction. So I'm going to get straight on with it, and I'm going to talk around 10 things that socially excellent people say or do. First up, socially excellent people adopt an enchant everybody approach. There are 3 things that you will do when you meet new people or when you socialise with a group. You will either get on the offensive and try to make an effort, and you might think, I'm going to build some rapport, I'm going to try and make a conscious effort here. Number 2, you will remain neutral, and many people do this, you will remain neutral and you will assess the other person first. You will assess them to see if it's worth your time or if you want to go forward and enchant them. Or number 3, you will make a snap judgment of that person by what they wear, how they carry themselves, what they say, and you will choose to repel them from the start and make it pretty obvious. So why do we do this and why does it happen? There is a part of your brain called the limbic system. And the limbic system, also known as the chimp in Steve Peters' The Chimp Paradox, the limbic system is responsible for emotions and feelings. And it's the fastest part of your brain to react when you socially interact with others. So it is making snap judgments when you interact socially for the first time. And the worst thing you can do is rely on that to come to your assumption, because it can be highly inaccurate. Who's done that before where I just don't like them. There's something about them, I'm not going to make an effort. And then actually 3 or 4 weeks later, it turns out to be the total opposite. It's really dangerous to make snap judgments. The second thing is, for those of you who remain neutral, and I'm going to check you, I'm going to work you out, you've got to prove yourself to me before I start interacting with you. And we've all done that from time to time. For you, those of you who do that, think about how that's coming across to the other person. Their chimp is also assessing you within the first 10 seconds, so you will come across as negative. And one or both parties will end up repelling each other anyway. Socially excellent people adopt an enchant everybody approach, because there and then, in that moment, you don't know what that person might do for you. The second thing here is, given what I've just explained about how we assess situations and come to quick conclusions, is socially excellent people master the first 10 seconds. This is particularly appropriate for salespeople. They make great first impressions, and I'm going to give you 3 tips, very basic, but something that we miss all the time. The number 1 is smile. When you meet people for the first time, smile. There is another part of our brain, and I'm not going to go too much about it because Wayne's going to cover it in his talk, which mimics and mirrors when you smile. So the minute you meet somebody new, we forget we're in a rush, we might be stressed. Smile. It creates instant rapport. The second tip I would give you, as well as smiling, is make eye contact. When we make I've just done it to Wayne there and he smiled at me. When we make eye contact, it comes across, it builds trust and rapport. It comes across as sincere. You are in the moment, and you are in the moment with the person. The third thing I would say about the first 10 seconds is your greeting, the dreaded greeting. We have 3 possible greetings that we carry out when we meet new people. It's either a handshake, it's either a kiss, sometimes a double kiss, depending on how much rapport you've got, or sometimes it's an embrace. The safe thing to do is a handshake. Who's ever heard a firm handshake with a squeeze is the right thing to do? It's wrong. A normal handshake is fine. There's no need to rock somebody to the boots or squeeze their hand. On the contrary, you don't want the wet fish and the 3 fingers. Excuse the pun. But a normal handshake is fine. So my point here is the first 10 seconds, just 3 subtle things. All you have to do is smile sincerely, make sustained eye contact with a really genuine and warm greeting, and you're off to a fantastic start. The next thing I'm going to talk about is socially excellent people make their early exchanges. So you've gone on the offensive and you're enchanting people. You've made a fantastic start. Where do you go from here? It can be quite awkward for many. Socially excellent people make their early exchanges entirely about the other person. And I'm going to spin something on its head here. What we tend to do when we meet people is say, "Hi, my name is," or "Hi, let me introduce myself," or "Hi." Just try making this subtle change. "Hi, how are you?" "Hi," this is a great one. "Hi, it's great to meet you." And by spinning it on its head and making it about the other person, you will release a chemical or a hormone. It's actually a neurotransmitter, but let's call it a hormone, called serotonin in the mind of the other person. It makes them feel significant and valuable, rather than it being about yourself. The second tip I'll give you on the early exchanges is find common ground quickly. Anybody who's in business or in a sales role should be doing this anyway. It's find common ground quickly. How do we find common ground quickly? We ask questions. Too often are we too eager to go into our own agenda in the heat of the moment. We ask questions. The third tip on this, linked to the second tip, is you might ask a question and they might start talking for 45 seconds about themselves or where they work or what they do or what their background is. Resist the temptation to turn the conversation immediately back on yourself. Have you ever heard the term of, are you truly listening or are you waiting for your turn to talk? I often get caught up, and I'll admit, sometimes I can be waiting for my turn to talk and I'm not listening to a word of what they're saying. So stay in the moment, be sincere, and resist the urge to turn the conversation on yourself. Ask second-level questions. The next part this is for leaders as well. So all of the business leaders we've worked with, this is common in every single one of them, the great leaders. Leaders and socially excellent people display really strong signs of emotional intelligence. And again, Wayne's going to cover this in his talk. But from our perspective, emotional intelligence, or the part of emotional intelligence that we focus on, is our awareness in social interaction. And there's 3 elements that we focus on, which is, are you aware of your own emotional state? People who are really aware of their own emotional state, they can feel themselves getting agitated, angry, coming across as short, whatever it might be. They can rein it in, they can leverage it. The second one, which I find really common in great leaders, is they understand power and group dynamics. So leaders who can recognize the people in their teams or in their environments who are both positive and negative influences or disruptive influences. And they're aware of this so they can leverage them and leverage the situation for the greater good. And the third part that we focus on in terms of emotional intelligence is empathy to others. Empathy to others in terms of understanding other people's needs and meeting them over our own. So that's a bit of an introduction into meeting people for the first time, making great first impressions, asking questions, resisting the temptation to turn it back on yourself. Reciprocation. There are 2 types of reciprocation. It is conditional and unconditional. And during my military career, I learned quickly that reciprocation in the military is entirely unconditional. And I've never earned as little amount of money in my life as I did in the military, but I've never felt camaraderie and togetherness like it. And if you asked any war hero, and we can ask Bertie later on, but if you ask any war hero or military person, why did you do what you do? Why did you carry out that act of bravery, they will always say the same thing or along the same lines because they would have done the same for me. And it's unconditional whether you've known somebody for 1 day or 1 year. Business, however, business is entirely conditional, and that is fine. It's the essence of business. I give you money, you give me a product or a service. That's fine. But here's 2 tips for reciprocation within business. You have to go first. Too many times do I see people or hear people say, well, what have they ever done for me? Why should I go out my way for them? You have to lead first, because if you reach out into every corner of your organization, or you live in your client's organization and you start doing things for other people, you will build up a favor bank to be able to utilize further down the line. The second tip on this, in terms of leveraging reciprocation in business, is a great Robert Cialdini quote. The next time you do something for somebody first, and they say thank you, never say you're welcome. Never say you're welcome. Instead, always say, it's okay, I know you will do the same for me. It's a really subtle way of saying, that's not a freebie, you owe me. You owe me now. Reciprocation is really important, but you have to go first. It's not unconditional in environments like the military. Socially excellent people capture and remember people's names and use them at every opportunity. There is no sweeter sound than your own name being mentioned in a public or group environment really positively. Great leaders do this. They will praise people in public and they will discuss areas to build on in person. And that was something somebody taught me years ago when I first started out in my leadership. Forgetting people's names is also a no-no. Who's been there where you've ever been introduced to somebody and you don't capture the name because you're in the moment, and then 2 weeks later they'll come up to you and they'll say, Martin, how's it going? And in that moment you're quickly trying to remember the person's name and you're sort of saying John. Is it John? Is it Dave? No, it's not. It's John. No, I don't know. So what you end up saying is something like, oh, hi mate. Hi mate. And it's so obvious. They know it, you know it, and it absolutely kills rapport. Try to capture people's names, remember them, and reuse them. So at this point, I know what you're thinking, Martin, this social excellence is pretty hard work. It's all give, give, give. We've got to smile at people. We've got to enchant people. We've got to ask questions. We've got to pretend to care. We've got to do all these things. Well, here's the caveat. Socially excellent people and great leaders, may I add, remove negativity from their environment, or they remove themselves from negativity. And for anybody, any leaders who have worked with me in a leadership workshop in the room, you will be familiar with my straight bat zone. And the straight bat zone is a mechanism to be able to recognize and deal with disruptive or negative leaders. For those of you who are in the room who are sat around a table with your business leader, I won't mention too much more in case you are in the straight bat zone. But the point here is great leaders, socially excellent people, they remove themselves from negativity, or they remove negativity from their environment, because it will drag you down. It will drag you down. Socially excellent people smile a lot. Now, I mentioned it in the first 10 seconds, but there was a great quote by Guy Kawasaki, who was one of the first 10 into Apple. He was one of the first chief evangelists of Apple. And he says, what does it cost to smile? Nothing. What does it cost not to smile? Everything, if it stops you from making connections. Smiling, and I'm sure Wayne will elaborate on it, smiling triggers a mimicking reaction in your amygdala, in your brain, which means if you sincerely and genuinely smile at people, they cannot help but smile back. And it removes bridges and it builds rapport. Really important one. If you think about all your close friends and your family and the people who you trust them because they get stuff done. And when you arrive in or when you're in your businesses, we tend to get bombarded from all directions. Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Can you do this for me? And if you take too much on, you become the octopus on roller skates. You're going in every direction but forward. And again, something that was taught to me years ago that I've always lived by is don't be afraid to say no, just be prepared to explain why. Say no to people, it's okay, because that will allow you to get stuff done. And when you get stuff done, you build trust and rapport with people, and you become credible. Get stuff done. Most importantly, in this section, socially excellent people make other people feel significant and valued. They empower people, and again, the great leaders do this. The serotonin is released in our minds when we feel significant and powerful. And I see leaders all the time, still today, who hit with the big stick, and it's a very micromanaging environment, and it's a very harsh environment. And for them, it's all about releasing serotonin in their own mind, themselves feeling powerful and influential. What the great leaders do, and the great socially excellent people do, is they empower others. They release serotonin in the mind of others. And by default, and in doing so, you become so yourself. So if there's anything you take from my talk this evening, let it be this. Values. I use the image of a tree to signify a personal value system. So all the things I've talked about this evening is great. Yes, we get some of these tips, Martins, and we understand the importance of social excellence and what that can do for us. But it has to be sincere. And to be sincere, it has to be you day in, day out. And again, the most successful people I work with and come across are the people who are themselves every single day. They are consistent, and people know who they are day in, day out. I use an image of a tree because if you imagine the roots of the tree, they remain hidden. And the tree ages in time and it changes in appearance, but the roots always remain the same. And that should be what our 3, 4, or 5 personal values are. It makes you identifiable and believable, and it helps you make really tough decisions. So if I was to ask anybody right now and pick somebody out of the audience, and I'm not going to, if I was to ask somebody to share their 3 values with me, you would struggle. On the spot right here and now, you would struggle. And I would have done until about 3 years ago. But ask yourself this, if I asked 10 of your team members or 10 of your best friends to describe you, would they all say the same thing? We've all been there where you just don't quite get somebody because one minute they're like this, the next minute they're different. In different company, they act very different, and we just don't trust them. Be who you are every single day. And I'm guessing, am I good for time? I'm guessing I'm good for time, so I've got a couple of minutes and I'll take my time with this story. What I observe quite a lot is at the end of sessions, I get people coming up to me for one-to-ones, and the universal question is around self-confidence. I just don't have the confidence to do what you do, Martin. I don't have the confidence to do this. I don't have the confidence to go to an interview, whatever it might be. And here's my view on self-worth and confidence and why we default to the safe ground. If you think back to when we was at school, when we was really, really young, the teacher on day 1 would line you all up in terms of shortest to tallest. And the 4'2" people would walk straight over to the left because they're going to be the shortest. And the tall people would walk straight over to the right because they're the tallest. And everybody in the middle would just sort themselves out in a bit of a hurry. And it was always deemed, although it was never said, it was always deemed that the tall people were more superior than the short people somehow, and everybody else in the middle just paled into insignificance. And it's the same, youngest to oldest, and it's the same in businesses. If you're young, you're deemed as green, wet behind the ears, inexperienced. And if you're older, you're deemed as tenured and mature. And then we go into our primary school and we start getting put in classes. You know, the green group are the top performers in the class. The red group are the down and outs and they need to do more work. And the amber group in the middle, you're just average, you're just normal. And then we go into higher education and we have grading systems. And then we get into the workplace and we have appraisals. And appraisals means that the top performing employees will get bonuses and promotions. And the lowest performing employees will be on a performance plan and they'll get managed out the business if they don't buck up. And everybody else in the middle, you're just all right, you're just standard. And we create, and social environments are the same, we create a neutral, safe ground that everybody gravitates to because it's safe. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these systems and there's no value to them, but what I'm asking you to consider is the impact that it has on your self-worth. I've had some successes, however small and insignificant they may be, but I've had them because I refuse to sit in the middle ground, which means I either take a risk and fail or I succeed. And if social excellence is the only thing that we control to be able to, build our network, gain credibility, establish a brand for ourselves, which will lead to success, then I implore you to move out of the middle today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Okay.